what you'll do. Once again, we're featuring motorcycles, Janus Motorcycles to be specific. You've never heard of them, that's okay, because I hadn't either, because it's a brand new, well, not a brand new company, it's been around for a while. You know, I love meeting young men and women who are building, actually making a product. I mean, an awful lot of people want to be web designers and computer tech guys, and that's all cool, but I like people that actually physically make things and actually make them here in America. And that's what these two gentlemen, Richard and Devin, come on in, guys. They started this company. I'm going to find out about it now, just like you will. How are you, guys?
Thanks for having us, Jay.
Devin, Richard, all right, very good. So where did the idea to start a motorcycle come from? Because this seems like not an impossible task in this day and age, but when you have huge manufacturers, BMW, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Harley Davidson, it seems like a tricky
daunting.
It seems daunting. Yeah, but I admire the tenacity and the fact that you've been building them for a while now.
That's right.
Produced about what, 500, 600?
Getting close to 500.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so where did this start? Did you guys meet in high school? You've been friends, or how did it happen?
All right. Well, Richard and I actually met through our passion of vintage pedal type mopeds, the old European bikes.
Right.
And he moved to Indiana. Boy, what year was that?
2007.
Yeah, 2007.
From where?
From Virginia.
Oh, from Virginia, okay.
Yeah. Along with him, he brought one of his little Italian mopeds.
Right.
And did what mopeds did best, and it broke down. And so he called the local moped shop, which was me. And he brought his bike in, and we fixed it. And he started hanging out more and more, and we became friends and eventually business partners from that.
Okay, so you decided to start a motorcycle company. I mean, it seems like a tough business because motorcycles are a limited field. You know, it's not one of the things people have to have. It's kind of a, at least in America.
At least in America.
Toy. You know, you go to Europe and it's basic transportation. Here, it's sort of a toy to go to college or whatever it might be.
Correct.
So what made you decide on smaller displacement bikes?
The small displacement bike was just a logical choice for us because that was why we were interested in motorcycles to start with. My passion growing up was cars. I love vintage cars, and what got me fascinated was the fact that you could work on your own moped. Right. And it was like a personal relationship you had with a machine. And they weren't too complicated. Everything was exposed, mostly metal. And so it was very logical for us. The first thing we built was a 50cc two-stroke, which we had a lot of fun building. It was essentially a custom production. We had about 40 over 3 years we built as we kind of ramped up production. And then we went with what for us would have been a huge bike, 250cc. Right. Was a big step up for us. But our goal is to make a motorcycle that captures all the good things about motorcycling and leaves some of the things that are maybe we consider unnecessary, at least for our tastes, on the side.
I know an awful lot of guys, very mechanically inclined, brilliant, make wonderful stuff, but they're not businessmen. You know, do you guys have a business background? Did you go to a bank to borrow money? How does one get started?
Yeah.
In something like that?
Yeah, my background is mainly in design.
Okay.
I have an architecture background. Devin ran his own business for 10 years before we started up. So he really brought a lot of the business acumen, but we really just kind of bootstrapped it to get started. It was all about, basically we would sell a bike and we had a year or more lead time, and that would fund the next bike, and that would fund, and so we weren't really making any money, but it was, I think looking back, at least we can say, oh, we were building the groundwork for this, but we didn't really know it. We just knew that we were trying to make something really cool.
So what's the first step? Do you find an engine? Is that the first step? Do you find a frame maker? Do you make the frames yourself?
Yes, we make the vast majority of the components.
Okay.
And we started out with a motor, and then Richard designed the frame, which is based around a Norton featherbed frame on all of our hardtail models. And we started with that, and we just went to a local, we actually asked around local shops to see who would do fabrication for us for a motorcycle frame. And sure enough, we were pointed to an Amish craftsman shop.
So the Amish do great work.
Yes.
You know, I have a lot of wheels that they still make the wooden wheels, and they are wheelwrights, and that's what they do.
Yeah.
And it's just brilliant. And everybody thinks that, well, they are old-fashioned, but they have cell phones. You know, but
Some of them do, yeah.
Some of them do because you can't have phone with wires, but a cell phone is okay. I mean, it's funny to figure out.
Lots of loopholes.
But incredibly honest, and they do beautiful work.
That's correct.
Okay, so you go to, so there's some Amish in here as well.
There's quite a bit. Yeah, they actually almost all the metal work is done.
Really?
By Amish craftsmen.
The leather work,
the leather,
the metal, the powder coating,
the polishing.
Yeah.
Basically all the parts that we make, which are the vast majority of the bike, we make within about 20 miles of our shop.
Well, see, I love the fact that manual skills are still valued. We live in an era where that kind of thing is falling by the wayside. The fact you can form a gas tank and it fits, and I think that's wonderful. So what did you do? Did you sit down and did you draw the bike you wanted to build? Did you just start building it and this is what it looked like? I mean, how did it come about?
Well, we started off with the first bike we built before we even had an idea of the company was a 50cc Grand Prix bike.
Right.
That was from our moped kind of background. So it was sort of going to look like the Phoenix here.
Right.
But my fascination, particularly with Brough Superior, Zenith, some of the older 1920s, just the pairing of form and function in the design of those bikes.
Bridgestone. You remember Bridgestone? They had the second most beautiful gas tank after Brough Superior. It was a copy of a Brough Superior.
Was it really?
And where does the name Janus come from?
Well, it's the Roman god of the road.
Okay.
So he looks to the past and the future. He has two faces, and that's kind of what we do. We look to the past and the future. These are modern bikes. Yeah, we're two-faced, exactly.
That's great. A couple of two-faced businessmen. Well, that's true. Okay. So that's an interesting name. Tell us about the engine. It appears to be Honda motor, something from the 90s type design. Tell me about the motor.
Yeah, so the engine is a CG250 is the Honda name, but it started off as the CB125, and that in the early 70s, Honda was having some trouble with their competitors who are making more two-strokes in third world developing markets, and they needed to. But they went out and they studied why are our engines not doing as well in these environments. They realized that, well, a CB125 needs regular oil changes and valve adjustments that these other bikes didn't need.
Right.
And so they sent their engineers out around the world to these markets, and they came back after realizing how these engines were being treated and designed the CG125, which was designed by Honda to be made all over the world in satellite manufacturing facilities. And by the 1990s, as Honda lost interest in this engine, the Chinese started developing it as a 250. So they bored it out to 229 cc's is the nominal dimension, and or the actual displacement. And then they added a balance shaft to the front to kind of smooth out that single cylinder.
Well, I find it fascinating that you're running a carburetor because nobody runs carburetors anymore. And I thought, when I heard about you guys, I said, are they selling them in California? I said, I don't really want to do it unless it's legal to sell in California, because I want to present something, well, you can't buy it here, you know. So the fact that you got a carbureted vehicle to pass California smog, that's like the greatest.
We're very proud of that.
Yes. Well, it is. I mean, it is, because it's extremely hard. The number of people that come here with automobiles, we're just waiting for our certification. It's coming any day now. And of course, it never comes. It just takes a long time. So the fact that you got this to pass, is it just a matter of leaning it out?
No, we bought our own 5-gas little handheld analyzer and just ran up and down the road till we got it. We're kind of in the ballpark, and then we worked with the wonderful people up at S&S Cycle in Wisconsin. And they, because they are specializing in carburation and exhausts, they have their own dyno and lab analyzer. So they're now a licensed EPA consultant.
Well, I mean, I like that because it shows that you're serious.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people do the fun part, the look and the feel.
Sure.
And then you get down to the work, and it's like, oh man, let's just sell it in Hawaii or somewhere. I don't know, anywhere else it'll go. So the fact that you've managed to do that, so it's a 50-state legal bike.
50-state legal.
I know, I think that's great. I think that's great. Is it electric start or kickstart?
Both.
Oh, okay. And you still have the Kickstarter, which I always like.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes that battery goes dead, and you're just screwed.
And you just look cool using it, too.
Yeah, okay. All right, so let's see. So we have the different models. I probably like the cafe bike because I'm sort of a cafe guy. I've got a little 250 Ducati that I just love. I mean, the joy of riding light bikes, you know, I've got so many bikes that are heavy where you come to a stoplight and you're, okay, you get this. So you can actually zip around, you can lean it against a tree, you can do whatever you want with it, you know. Pretty neat.
All three bikes weigh in at about 265 pounds wet. And that's with, they put it at about 14.5 horsepower, but remarkably, that's actually a pretty good power to weight ratio. So they're pretty peppy around town.
Yeah, I've got a Fiat Topolino, and that's 13.5 horsepower, and that's a car. So the fact, okay. Now tell me about the colors. Are these the factory colors, or is there any color you want? How does that work?
Yeah, we offer, these are all factory colors. This is actually the most popular, it's the olive drab, but we offer about 7 different factory colors, and then a whole plethora of colors when it comes to the pinstripe.
You know, I really like this color until you said it was olive drab, and then I went, oh, it's drab. Well, I think it's something like, I don't know, something a little more exciting than that.
We'll work on that.
Well, now, of course, the real part is, how does one compete with China and Japan in the market?
Or India.
Or India too, doing
wonderful
motorcycles. You know, they got those Royal Enfields that are pretty nice. So how do you compete? Where do you see what's the niche market? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. Our owners, what they're excited about, what they report back to us is it's the handcrafted, the story of the bikes that we're building. What we're trying to do is just really fascinates people, because we are trying to bring back a real automotive manufacturing company in the Midwest, and we're doing it all with care. Like this is all hand pinstripe, all done by Kelly, our pinstriper.
And how far are you from Indianapolis?
We're about 3 hours north of Indy.
Oh, okay. Because a lot of people remember back in the 20s and 30s, Indiana was the second Michigan as far as automobile manufacturing. In fact, it was almost which one's going to be bigger. You know, they had Cord, they had Duesenberg, they had Studebaker. Yeah, all of those. You know. So okay. Now, what do these go for? That's the tricky part.
Yeah, all 3 models start out at the same price. It's $69.95.
Okay.
So we feel like we have a pretty competitive price for what the bikes are.
So it's $7,000.
$7,000, and then there's a number of upgrades you can make. And so these are they're not custom motorcycles, they're production motorcycles, but they're far more customizable than most vehicles you can get.
Right.
So you can add the saddlebags or the highway bars or the headlight visor, all that kind of stuff. And,
I mean, the tricky thing in today's market is the fact that there's so many used bikes for sale.
That's right.
You know, every orthodontist that had a Harley is for sale now. And I get guys all the time. Like, I bought mine in '98. It's got 1,300 miles. Well, what? I mean, they're essentially new. I mean, that's the tough part that you're competing against. So it's interesting. It's interesting. And which of these is the most popular model? Oh, this one here.
By far.
With the wide bar. Okay. Very nice.
This is a hardtail.
Oh, and it's a hardtail.
It's a hardtail. Well.
And on these, I just noticed that, right? These are shocks, all right.
So our front suspension also has shock absorbers on there. That's a design that most people are familiar with, the Earl's fork of the BMWs.
Right.
This would actually be more similar to the actual Earl fork.
Well, that is an Earl's fork, isn't it?
It's a leading link.
Right, yeah.
The Earl's comes all the way to the back.
And BMW stopped that about what?
70s, 71, I think.
71, something like that. Okay. All right, for what, 5-speed, 4-speed? What do we have?
5-speed.
5-speed transmission.
1 down, 4 up, real simple.
And I imagine you probably get fairly good mileage with these.
Yeah, the EPA gave us 77 miles to the gallon.
Oh, okay.
Our owners report, average riding 60 miles is pretty easy to achieve.
Well, I love the fact that you've gone through all of that. You've got EPA certification. You've got, cause just like I said, some people come here with half a project. It's just, it's not done until you're actually producing them and you're on the road. And now you guys are on the road producing them. All right, very cool. Let's see, anything else we need to know?
Manual choke.
Okay.
No fuel gauge, so don't go too far.
Right. So you just open the thing and you strike a match and look at
Exactly. Probably the most unique thing about it is related to the suspension. That's a leading link, so it actually has an anti-dive.
Right.
So when you slam on those front brakes, it's not going to dive down. It's going to basically hold neutral.
Right. Okay. Well, Vincent had that hydraulic deal.
That's right.
They had that. Yeah. Well, interesting. Okay. And Brough too, but the trouble is the fork was so weak. If you put a brake on it, you can actually crack it.
Oh wow!
So you just sort of
slowed down.
Accident avoidance technology.
Hedges.
Hedges. You can go into the hedges and into the woods. Okay. And your only gauge is no ammeter light, no nothing.
You have your high beam, low beam, turn indicator, and a neutral indicator.
Okay.
And the only interlock is the neutral finder.
Are you guys required to have anti-lock on here?
No, we're not. Currently, U.S. Regulation doesn't. Euro 5 now. Euro 4 did, and Euro 5 certainly does.
Right, Euro 5. Because I mean, if you want to sell these in Europe, it's got to be tricky, right?
Yep.
So you've got to have that.
They require that along with things like ISO certification, which make it difficult.
Well, let's take it for a ride. Which one do you suggest I ride?
Well, we would suggest you ride the
the
flagship.
hardtail?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, we'll give the hardtail a shot. See how it goes. hope you realize where the name hardtail comes from. Actually moves along pretty nicely. 14.5 horsepower is not bad. It seems to be exceptionally well made. Everything works. You hit neutral, the neutral light comes on. I know that sounds normal, but you'd be surprised how many bikes it doesn't work. And it's a 5-speed, not a 4-speed, which is nice. I mean, this is truly a retro bike in the sense that there's really no modern technology in here. It's a bike, it's an engine from probably the early 80s, early 90s. Been updated a little bit. It's smooth. Those balance shafts they put in seem to have done the trick, because I look in the mirrors and at high revs, I don't see anything vibrating. This is really a pretty basic motorcycle. You know, no tachometer, no shock absorbers. All the hardware appears to be first class. You know, nothing vibrating. Everything seems solidly mounted. I'm in 3rd gear right now, and it pulls along nicely. You know, a lot of people prefer a hardtail motorcycle because you always know where the rear end of the bike is. You know, you always know what it's going to do because it's very predictable. I've got a couple of Bruff Superiors that are hardtails, and if you put good springs in the seat, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You know, it's funny, I always love the look of a cafe bike over a standard handlebar bike, but when I get on a bike like this with these kind of bars, I realize this is way more comfortable, especially if you're just sightseeing, you know, if you're around town. I think the cafe version where you're down here, I think it would be a little uncomfortable. Whereas this, if you're just bopping around the neighborhood, you want to do a little sightseeing, it's actually quite enjoyable. Jeez. Nice thing about this hardtail, if you have hemorrhoids, it'll knock them back in. Let's see what she'll do. It's really pretty smooth. No, the British built singles like this in the 60s, but they vibrated so much, you'd look at your watch and both hands would be at the bottom of it because they'd fall off. Richard and Devin the best. You know, it's good to see the entrepreneurial spirit alive and well in America. You know, back in the 20s and 30s, young men like them came up with cars and motorcycles, and, you know, every town had a manufacturer, you know, but it's a tough business. But I think they're on the right path. They built a quality product. If I had any criticism at all, I might say it's a little underpowered for what it is, but that's okay. Everybody has different needs. You know, if you're not, I wouldn't want to take this on the freeway in LA, just get run over, but for commuting around town, college campus, going to school, that kind of stuff, I think it's great. It's a lot of fun. So I want to wish Janus Motorcycles the best of luck, and keep us posted on your success. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.